how did a noblewoman become one of the most notorious serial killers in Russian history? This is the chilling story of Darya Nikolaevna Saltykova, better known as Saltychika. Born into privilege, she became a byword for cruelty. Behind her aristocratic facade lurked a monster. Prepare to be shocked by the details of her crimes. Darya Nikolaevna Saltykova was born into wealth and status. Her family was well-connected, moving within the highest circles of Russian society. Some historical accounts hint at a family history of violence and instability. Was she a product of her environment, or was there a more sinister, innate darkness residing within her? Step back in time to 18th century Russia. Opulence and poverty existed side by side. The ruling class lived in extravagant luxury, while the serfs toiled in abject poverty. Born into the elite, Saltychika would have been instilled with a sense of her own superiority. This sense of absolute power, unchecked and unquestioned, could easily have warped her perception of right and wrong. Most accounts of Saltychika's early life are shrouded in speculation. Some historians believe that she was a witness to, or even a victim of, abuse within her own family. This exposure to violence could have desensitized her to human suffering. The normalization of cruelty would become the building blocks of her own twisted worldview. At the age of 26, Saltychika's life took a dramatic turn. Her husband died, leaving her a wealthy widow with vast estates and hundreds of serfs under her control. This sudden shift in power could have been a catalyst for the horrors that were to follow. Widowhood granted her a level of autonomy that was rare for women in 18th century Russia. Freed from the constraints of her marriage, Saltychika's true nature began to emerge. What started with harsh punishments for minor infractions quickly escalated into a reign of terror. Her preferred victims were young peasant women, many of whom were forced to endure unimaginable suffering. She would beat her victims mercilessly with rods, whips, and logs. Some were scalded with boiling water, others were starved and left to freeze to death. Saltychika's reign of terror lasted for years, her power seemingly absolute within the confines of her estates. As Saltychika's reign of terror continued, rumors of her atrocities began to spread. Whispers of her cruelty reached Moscow, carried by terrified servants who had managed to escape. At first, these whispers were met with disbelief, but as more tales of horror emerged, even the most skeptical began to question the truth. Despite the growing unease, the authorities were slow to react. What makes Saltychika's story even more disturbing is the apparent lack of remorse she displayed for her actions. She saw her serfs as little more than possessions, objects to be used and discarded at her whim. This detachment, this chilling lack of empathy, is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of her story. Some historians believe that she may have suffered from a mental illness, perhaps a personality disorder. In a society where the lives of serfs were valued so little, is it any wonder that someone like Saltychika could emerge? Despite the wall of silence surrounding Saltychika's estate, the whispers of her atrocities continued to circulate. The sheer number of deaths on her estates was impossible to ignore completely. The rumors eventually caught the attention of a few courageous individuals. These individuals began to gather evidence of Saltychika's crimes. Their determination would prove pivotal in prying open the case and exposing the truth. Bringing a noblewoman like Saltychika to justice was no easy feat. The Russian legal system in the 18th century was heavily skewed in favor of the elite. Yet the sheer volume of accusations against Saltychika began to exert pressure on the authorities. The rumors had reached the ears of Empress Catherine the Great, who ordered a thorough investigation. This marked a turning point in the case. The investigation, headed by a magistrate named Stepan Volkov, was meticulous, even in the face of considerable resistance. Under Volkov's direction, investigators began the arduous task of gathering evidence against Saltychika. They visited her estates, interviewing servants and examining the grounds. What they found was even more horrifying than the rumors had suggested. Investigators uncovered hidden chambers, some containing the skeletal remains of Saltychika's victims. The testimonies were chilling, each one painting a picture of a woman consumed by a sadistic bloodlust. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable. Darya Saltykova's case continues to fascinate and horrify centuries after her crimes. Some historians and psychologists speculate that Saltychika may have suffered from a severe personality disorder, such as sadism. The meticulous planning, the prolonged torture, and the apparent lack of remorse all point to a mind detached from empathy. Others posit that her actions stemmed from a profound sense of power and entitlement. As a noblewoman in 18th century Russia, she wielded absolute power over her serfs. This unchecked authority, coupled with a potential lack of empathy, could have created a perfect storm for her descent into madness. The dynamics of power undoubtedly played a crucial role in shaping Saltychika's behavior. The absolute power she wielded over her serfs fostered an environment where cruelty could thrive unchecked. Her word was absolute, and her actions, however brutal, were rarely questioned. This unchecked power can have a corrupting influence, especially on individuals predisposed to violence or cruelty. It's a chilling reminder of the potential for abuse inherent in any system where power goes unchecked and where those in control are not held accountable for their actions. Darya Saltykova's reign of terror finally ended in 1762, when she was arrested and charged with the deaths of at least 38 of her serfs, though the true number is believed to be far higher. Her trial was a sensational affair, captivating the Russian public and sending shockwaves through the aristocracy. The detailed accounts of her cruelty, the testimonies of her surviving victims, and the irrefutable evidence of her crimes shocked even the most cynical observers. Despite her noble status and attempts by her family to shield her from justice, the weight of evidence against her was overwhelming. Empress Catherine the Great, eager to distance herself from the scandal and demonstrate her commitment to justice, ensured that Saltychika faced the full force of the law. Found guilty of her crimes, Saltychika was stripped of her nobility and sentenced to life imprisonment in a convent. She was chained to the wall of a damp, dark cellar, her only contact with the outside world a small window through which food was passed. She languished in this solitary confinement for 11 years before dying in 1801. Her name forever etched in history as a byword for cruelty and depravity. While justice was ultimately served, Saltychika's case exposed the deep flaws in the 18th century Russian legal system and the unchecked power wielded by the nobility. It sparked public outrage and contributed to growing pressure for legal reforms that would afford greater protection to serfs and hold even the most powerful accountable for their crimes. Darya Saltykova's reign of terror left an indelible stain on Russian history, a chilling testament to the horrors that can unfold when power goes unchecked. For decades, she operated with impunity, her noble status shielding her from scrutiny and consequence. The serfs under her control, trapped in a system that offered them no protection, endured unimaginable suffering. Their lives, deemed expendable by the ruling class, were sacrificed at the altar of her sadistic whims. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the urgent need for a just and equitable society. When certain individuals or groups are placed above the law, when their actions are not subject to scrutiny and accountability, it creates an environment where cruelty and exploitation can flourish. The very fabric of society is threatened when those entrusted with power abuse it for their own gratification, their victims silenced and forgotten. Saltychika's trial, though delayed and initially met with resistance from within the ranks of the nobility, marked a turning point in Russian history. It shone a light on the plight of the serfs and the urgent need for legal reforms that would protect the vulnerable from the whims of the powerful. The public outcry generated by her case, the sheer horror at the extent of her crimes, forced the ruling class to confront the consequences of their own indifference and complicity. The wheels of justice, though slow, had been set in motion. Saltychika's conviction, her dramatic fall from grace, sent a clear message that even the most powerful were not above the law. It marked a step, however tentative, towards a more just and equitable society, one where the rights of all were respected, regardless of their social standing. Centuries after her death, Darya Saltykova's name continues to evoke a visceral reaction, her crimes a chilling reminder of the darkest depths of human cruelty. The brutality she inflicted, the utter disregard she displayed for the lives of her victims, transcends time and culture, serving as a universal warning against the dangers of unchecked power and the corrosive effects of unchecked sadism. Her story continues to fascinate and horrify, prompting us to grapple with uncomfortable questions about human nature. How could someone, born into privilege and seemingly untouched by the hardships endured by most, descend into such depravity? What combination of nature and nurture, of individual pathology and societal influence, could give rise to such a monster? While definitive answers may forever remain elusive, exploring these questions is essential, not only to understand the past, but to safeguard the future. By studying cases like Saltykova's, by delving into the psychological and sociological factors that contribute to such extreme violence, we gain a deeper understanding of the potential for human cruelty and the warning signs that often precede it. This knowledge is not merely academic, it is a call to action. By recognizing the patterns of abuse, by challenging systems that perpetuate inequality and injustice, by fostering a culture of empathy and accountability, we can work to prevent such atrocities from happening again. The legacy of Darya Saltykova, then, should not be one of fear and horror alone, but also one of vigilance and resolve, a reminder that the fight for justice and human dignity is an ongoing struggle that demands our constant attention. The story of Darya Saltykova is a chilling reminder that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing struggle, one that requires constant vigilance and a willingness to challenge the status quo. It is a story that transcends the confines of 18th century Russia, resonating with contemporary concerns about power, privilege, and the abuse of authority. As we delve into the annals of history, we must not shy away from the darkness, from the uncomfortable truths that challenge our perceptions of humanity. The stories of those who suffered, of those whose voices were silenced, must be told and retold, not to glorify the perpetrators, but to honor the victims and to ensure that their suffering is never forgotten. Remembering these stories is not merely an act of historical preservation, it is an act of defiance, a refusal to allow the past to repeat itself. By acknowledging the injustices of the past, by confronting the systemic issues that allowed them to occur, we can work towards a more just and equitable future. The fight for justice is a collective one, requiring the participation of all who believe in a world where power is not a tool for oppression, but a force for good. It is a fight that demands courage, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to holding those in power accountable for their actions. Let the story of Darya Saltykova serve as a stark reminder of what is at stake and a call to action for us all. If you found this deep dive into Saltykova's dark legacy compelling, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know what you think about her case. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations into the world of criminology. Your engagement helps us bring more stories to light.